Hey, what's up, guys? It's Saturday. Timothy here. Actually, it's Sunday, not Saturday. But there were a couple spoilers I never got to on Friday because I jammed the Thursday spoilers on Friday and forgot to come back and do them. So before we start getting next week's spoilers starting tomorrow, I wanted to go ahead and go through a couple cards that were spoiled last Friday, just to be up to speed when new spoilers start coming out. So I believe last time I talked about Cruel Reality, which was a really expensive win condition, but seemed like it could be pretty good in the late game if you could manage to survive into the late game and then use this to kind of wrap things up while durdling along. And we also talked about the alternate win con, which, again, I'm not entirely sure how good this is, but it is definitely cool, and I imagine it is it is feasible to actually win with this card. But we talked about them last time, so check out those videos. And I think we just have 8 cards to talk about that came out on Friday. So if you haven't seen those yet, check them out with me here. The first one is a rare. New Perspectives is 5 and a blue for a rare enchantment. When it enters battlefield, you draw 3 cards, and as long as you have 7 or more cards in your hand, you may pay 0 rather than pay cycling cost. So you can just cycle for free. First off, I don't understand the flavor of this card. I'm not sure what New Perspectives on what, right? What is this? Is this a thing? Is this just us looking at part of Amonket? Is this part of a trial? I have no idea what the flavor is. But the card itself, it's kind of wonky, right? You need some sort of payoff to be doing this. This works really nice with that enchantment that makes the drakes. I keep referencing it, so I should probably figure out what the name of that card is and just commit that to memory here. But a couple things have to be going right. First off, you have to be able to get to a turn where you can afford to tap out for a 6-mana enchantment. I'm not talking about standard here. Keep in mind we're talking about limited. And I don't know, drawing 3 cards doesn't seem like something you want to spend 6 mana for. So you really have to rely on that second part. And then a couple things have to be going right there as well. First off, this doesn't even do anything unless you have 7 or more cards in hand, which, same thing I said for Kefnet, that's kind of hard to do in limited. Maybe if the format's dirtily enough and slow enough, you can manage to do that and be safe. But you're probably tapping out to do this. You've probably been holding on to a bunch of cards for the payoff here, and then you have to make that cycling thing matter, right? Just cycling stuff for free isn't going to get you anywhere. You have to have some sort of benefit, like that Drake card or something along those lines, or something that cares about you constantly discarding cards. And then you also just need to have actual cycling cards in your deck. Sometimes you'll play decks that don't have any cycling cards, and then this is just 6 mana harmonize, 6 mana draw 3 cards, and that's not good at sorcery speed. So I'm a little disappointed to see. I imagine this is the type of rare that you'll see and you won't be super happy or super stoked. I don't think it's like a powerhouse. It's not even really like an engine card unless your deck is nothing but cycling cards and you have the payoff for that. But it is still a card we must discuss. And I don't know, every now and then, you know, drawing 3 cards is worth it. But for 6 mana, you really need to be ahead on the board, or you need to have some sort of action or some sort of plan for it. Moving along, we have Angel of Sanctions, 3 and double white for a 3/4 mythic angel with flying. This is a mythic rare, thank God. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield, and you can embalm it for 5 and a white. And when you embalm it, you get this sweet little zombie angel token, which is pretty awesome. Keep in mind, when you embalm it, the token comes in and you get the same effect off of it. So this is a Banisher Priest. Like, if I scroll down, we've seen this card before a lot. This type of card actually just comes up in limited very, very often, both in the form of enchantments and in the form of creatures, with Fairground Wardens, or Fairgrounds Warden being probably the most recent example. Just creatures that come in and exile something your opponent controls until they leave the battlefield. 9 times out of 10, they're some of the best cards in the set as far as non-rares go. So when you see this sort of ability tacked onto a rare or even a mythic rare, it's usually pretty good. The last one I remember being like this high in rarity was Quarantine Field from Battle for Zendikar, and that card was very, very good in limited. I imagine this card's going to be really good in limited too. So you're already getting a pretty efficient flyer. A 3/4 for 5 is nothing to scoff at. That's just decent rate for a flyer, and you're getting a removal spell tacked onto that. Notice this doesn't have to hit creatures. This can hit any permanent on the battlefield. or any of your opponent's non-land permanents. So you can get rid of a problematic enchantment or an artifact or a token or something like that. But a lot of times you'll just use this to remove a creature. Now, the downfall or the pitfall of these creatures is that once you get rid of them, they get their card back. So it's only a temporary 2-for-1. The sweet part about this guy is you embalm him, and if your opponent deals with him on turn 5, you can embalm on turn 6, right? The embalm cost is reasonable for a 3/4 flyer, and not only do you get your dude back, but you get to exile a new target, whether it's the same thing that you had the first time, or whether it's a new target this time, maybe something even better. So this is a really neat design. For the sake of standard and other things, like, this doesn't feel like a mythic rare to me. I've said this a couple times in this set. The mythics are a little bit of misses for me. But as far as like just flavor and like uniqueness go, this isn't a particularly unique card, but it is nice use of the embalm mechanic. It is a really strong limited card, and that just puts white at like super strong rares, right? We've seen so many already, and this is what we're used to from limited sets. White just having bonkers rares. This card is insane. Gideon is very good. We've seen the trained Caracal or the Regal Caracal. The Cat Ward is super insane. The Glory Bound Initiate is very strong. Just white has so many really strong rares here, and that usually says something. Aether Revolt kind of took off for that. If you go back and look at my review for Aether Revolt, I said white was lacking its bomb rares, but geez, this guy is a beating in limited. Will it see standard play? I don't know. Check out another video. But limited, this guy is the real deal. Very strong card. Moving along, it's probably the strongest card we're going to see today. We have Dissenters Deliverance. I'm sorry, the Angel. Let me clarify what I meant there. Dissenters Deliverance is not the strongest card we'll see today. But Dissenters Deliverance is 1 and a green for a common instant, destroy target artifact, or you can cycle it for a green. Now, this is a nod to standard right now. This is a nod to green decks being able to defeat vehicles, being able to destroy Card of Kiran, Ether Sphere, whatever it's called, or Ether Sphere Harvester, Walk-in Ballista, so on and so forth, and doing it at a decent rate. But this is kind of what we needed in standard in the first place, like some sort of cheap but not super crazy answer to artifacts, and they avoided printing it because we were in an artifact set. But again, we're not here to talk about standard. Would you play this card main deck in limited? Would I? No. But it's the type of card you should never feel bad about playing in limited. I said the same thing about the black instant that exiles 3 cards from a graveyard, but it has Cyclone for a black. Because of Cyclone, you could main deck these cards, especially if you're hurting on playables. Maybe you're drafting green, and then you just get cut off, and you're really scrapping for playables. You could always play a card like this in your main deck, and if your opponent just isn't playing artifacts or doesn't have any good targets, you cycle it, right? The power of Cyclone is real, say it every single time. It gives you an alternative thing to do with the card if the card just isn't going to function in your hand or is not what you need at a particular moment. And then on top of that, this is just a fantastic sideboard card against people who have all of the legendary artifacts in this set or anything relevant for this to hit in the first place. And it still has Cyclone even in those situations. So you've already dealt with the artifact, or the artifact's just not doing anything significant. You can always cycle this for a new card. So pretty sweet little sideboard card that you could main deck, but I would still say relegate it to the sideboard here. I've heard a lot about this card. I think a lot of people are excited about this card, mostly for EDH purposes, because it's really fun in EDH. But the card is Bounty of the Lucia, I don't know. Luxa is what I'm going to call it, because I'm unsophisticated. But 2 green and a blue for a rare enchantment. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, remove all flood counters from it. If you didn't remove any flood counters, put a flood counter on it and draw a card. Otherwise, add a colorless, a green, and a blue to your mana pool. So, just to sum this up, what it does is, the turn you play it, nothing happens. And then the turn after, you draw a card, and then the turn after that, you remove the counter that it got, and you get 3 mana, and then it alternates, basically. So, the first turn after you play this, you draw a card. The turn after that, you get 3 mana, then you draw a card, then 3 mana. So, for limited purposes, this isn't insanely good or anything, right? It's a 4-mana enchantment that requires you to be in 2 specific colors in what looks to be just a 2-color set. So splashing, probably not as relevant here as it was in maybe Aether Revolt or Kaladesh or something like that. But again, a rare enchantment, you're not going to see it come up very often. You have to be in green-blue to make it really matter. It doesn't do anything the turn it comes down. It draws you a card every other turn instead of every turn, which is really what you want in enchantments like this. And you have to find a use for that 3 mana, which every other turn having 3 extra mana to use can get you pretty far ahead. This can ramp you pretty seriously, but you don't actually get mana until minimum turn 6. Which by that time you're already on turn 6 and you've already played a 4-mana enchantment. Just cast your other cards, right? So is this card strong and limited? I don't know. But if you're in a stall sort of deck, or you need some sort of advantage over your opponent, or you find that your opponent's in some sort of really stalling deck and you just need to keep up with 2-for-1s or make sure that you can keep at parity with your opponent, there are worse ways to do it. I just don't think this card is super insane. I know it doesn't function exactly the same, but it does remind me a lot of Midnight Oil from Kaladesh, which was just a Phyrexian Arena type card where you could get card advantage, but even in decks that wanted it, you wouldn't be able to play it because you'd be under too much pressure and it didn't really do anything when it came down. Where I see this being relevant is if you know you're in a stalled matchup and then you board it in as a way to just get ahead in the game. But otherwise, I don't think it's that great. I do think it's really cool for EDH, and I think it's unnecessarily wordy for what it does, but it's still a cool card, and the flavor on it's pretty fantastic. On theme with the flooding that happens in Egypt, I guess, is the idea. I have no idea, but pretty sweet little card. Just for limited, I would probably say stay away from it, even though it's playable. I just don't think it's fantastic. And then we got a couple other cards to just be aware of. Nothing that's going to like blow our minds or anything, but we have Supply Caravan as a 4 and a white common 3/5 camel creature. When it enters the battlefield, if you control a tapped creature, create a 1/1 white warrior token with vigilance. Now, 5 mana 3/5, see this come up a lot. It's never been impressive in limited. It will do its job pretty nice. Sometimes 5 toughness is just enough to stop your opponent from attacking, especially if they're an aggressive deck and they've just been getting in on the ground early enough. You play this and suddenly your opponent can't really attack anymore because their burn spells aren't going to kill a 5 toughness creature and their creatures aren't big enough to get through it, and 3 power is enough to just stop your creatures from really being relevant. It's awkward that you have to have a tapped creature to make this work, but that shouldn't be too hard to pull off. You just use some sort of activated ability, or you do this post-combat, which you would probably do anyway, and hopefully you can get the little 1/1 out of it. If you don't, then this is just a vanilla creature that's not impressive by any means. If you do, then it's still not like the most impressive card, but you are getting essentially 4/6 for 5, which I think is pretty good, and going wide is something that white seems to want to do here, especially with the white trial, which is going to be the basis of a lot of white decks, just trying to spread out these tokens, trying to get a lot of bodies on board, and then playing the trial and cartouche cycle to pump your board +2/+1 and hopefully win for the game. Like the inspired charge type decks from Kaladesh is kind of what we're looking at here. But this is an awkward card, but it's a decent one. This reeks of like 20 to 23rd pick card or playable card in your deck. So oftentimes you can cut this just because it is kind of a expensive clunky creature, but it's never bad to include this card in your deck, I don't think. It's definitely not like gonna crack anyone's best white commons list or anything like that, but I think it's a solid card overall. Next card on the list here is Nimble Blade Kenra. Nimble Blade Kenra, which is 1 in a red for a 1/3 with prowess. It's a common Jackal Warrior. We've seen this card a couple times. There was Jeskai Student. Yeah, you can see it right down here. There was Jeskai Student in Khans of Tarkir. There was Sanguinary Mage in Shadows of Innistrad. They were both the same exact card, just Jeskai Student was different, and Sanguinary Mage had a little bit of tribal synergy going on. And they've never been impressive. Even with like decks that could synergize with the specific cards, they were just never impressive in my book. In fact, I remember Jeskai Student being like virtually an unplayable card, and Sanguinary Mage being like a little bit disappointing unless you were like hardcore vampires. And you know, this card's probably going to be about the same. The awkward thing about it is that it's red, and a 1/3 is not really what you want to be doing in red. And even if you're able to like cast a spell on turn 3 and attack with this thing with +1/+1 and it's attacking for 2, like that's not really that impressive. You would rather just play a 2-power creature and make sure it's consistently dealing 2. It does block fairly well, which is basically all these creatures ever do, but this is like filler material for a red deck and not really what you want to be doing in red anyway. Moving along, looks like we've got 2 cards left. We have Winged Shepherd, or Winged Shepherd, if you're as unsophisticated as I am. Winged Shepherd is 5 and a white for a 3/3 common angel with flying and vigilance, and cycling for 1 white mana. Now, this is a decent card because of cycling. If this doesn't have cycling, like, I would almost barely not even look at this creature. 3/3 for 6 is not great, but the power of cycling, like, how many times do I have to repeat it? I should just record it and then, like, play the recording every time. The power of cycling here is sometimes you get to the point in the game where, you know, this is just a relevant creature to drop on the board. Maybe people are just at a board stall with each other and you need some sort of flyer to be able to close out the game, or some sort of attacker that, or just another body on board, and then you have access to this. And then sometimes you're really early in the game and your opponent's beating you down and you know for a fact you're never going to get to 6 mana, and this has such a cheap cycling cost that you just pitch it and you try to find something more relevant at the time. So this is what good cycling cards look like. They're relevant early in the game because they allow you to cycle for a new card, and they're relevant late in the game if you get to the point where, you know, you have your mana, you're not really hurting for cards, you just need more bodies on the board. And that's what I've said for pretty much every single cycling card so far. So if I'm starting to sound like a broken record, it's just because cycling is such an amazingly good ability for limited and for deck building, where any card that has cycling is automatically playable, and any card that has cycling is just a stronger version of the same card that wouldn't have cycling. Is this an impressive body for 6 mana? No, and vigilance isn't really worth the extra mana you're paying here, but, you know, it's decent. The fact that it's a lot of people say this if you listen to, like, professionals talk about the cards. It's like a split card. It has 2 different modes, and the modes are relevant at different points in the game. And split cards are usually very good in limited because they give you options. Having options is nice. So Winged Shepherd, just, you know, a generic kind of cycling card, but a decent one at that because of its flexibility. And then finally, we have Champion of Rhonas, which we have not seen Rhonas yet, but I'm excited to see the rest of the gods next week. Champion of Rhonas is 3 and a green for a 3/3 rare Jackal Warrior. You may exert it when it attacks, and when you do, you may put a creature from your hand on the battlefield. And that's it. No downside to that. First off, you're getting a... You're just getting a Hill Giant, right? A 4-mana 3/3. So you're getting a decent creature. Usually a 4-mana 3/3 is going to have trouble getting in a clean hit. But if you can replace this with any other creature from your hand, that seems very, very good. If you ever get multiple hits out of this, like, just game over, right? Now, there are times you'll play this, you don't really have a good creature to put in hand, but or put on the battlefield from your hand, but you still get to put something into play. It reminds me, let me see if it's down here. It's not. It reminds me of a card from, I want to say M15. It was a reprint. I want to say its name was Precinct Captain. It was a 2/2 for 3, and when it attacked, you could put a soldier on the battlefield. I think the creature came in tapped or attacking, but you get the point, right? It's a creature that lets you essentially just dump something else on the battlefield for free. Very similar to, like, the Expertise cycle from Aether Revolt. Cards that let you kind of cheat on mana, get an extra advantage on the board, so on and so forth. And if you can protect this with some sort of, like, pump spell or some sort of protection spell in the middle of the combat and save this creature, or, you know, God forbid, actually kill your opponent's creature with it, while also additionally getting to put, like, I don't know, your vanilla 5/5 for 5 on the battlefield for free, you should be way, way far ahead. It doesn't do anything until turn 5, assuming that you're not ramping into it, but it is a nice card to curve into and gives you a lot of open mana if you're able to just put a free creature from your hand on the battlefield rather than spending your mana to cast it. So I do think this card is very good for limited. I'll let you guys speculate on whether or not it'll be in Aetherworks Marvel or what have you, but I think the card is really sweet. And you don't get to see this sort of effect in limited very often, where you can just put free cards from your hand on the battlefield. creatures at least, and this leads me to believe that this will probably be a very, very effective and strong rare, if not necessarily like a bomb rare. It does have to get to attack. It does require that you actually have stuff in your hand to be cast. But anyway, that's going to go ahead and take care of everything. I guess one more thing before I leave here, if my computer decides to stop being stupid. I want to go back and look at Kefnet real quick, just because we do have the masterpiece art, and hopefully it's on Mythic Spoiler. Yeah, so I just wanted to go and share this on camera. Kefnet's masterpiece art, you'll notice he has no head. He has like a little earthworm gym head, and that's all that's left of him. If only this art was a little more expansive. But I do like the original Kefnet art, even though I don't think the card is amazing. But anyway, there you go. Wanted to go and share that with you. I hope we get as many awesome spoilers next week as, or this coming up week, as we did this last week. And I thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you're enjoying the cards as much as I am. My name's Timothy, and I will see y'all next time.